So first up then, the results of my little haul on the NewCon Press summer sale a couple of weeks back. And I was tempted by the prices. The postage is a per book cost, so it kind of adds up. And it made it sort of a little bit less attractive in the end. But nonetheless, I think it's good to support a small press publisher. So first up, we've got Rise by Kim Lakin-Smith. There was a hardback of this as well, but I thought the paperback would do me. So this apparently is a searing portrayal of redemption and compassion in the face of prejudice and brutality. So it sounds like a barrel of laughs. Rise. Then we've got NewCon Press have done a bunch of novella series over the years, and this I think was their first one. And I've sort of set myself a bit of a problem. So I've got 2 of them now. There are 4 in this little set. And these are all kind of space opera type things. So this is The Enclave by Anna Charnock. I think it's Jim Burns' artwork, if I remember rightly. No, it's not. Andy Bigwood. And then At the Speed of Light by Simon Morden. Trying to avoid the glare there. Hopefully you can see that okay. And the other 2 in the set are The Memorialist by Neil Williamson, which you can get online. They're out of stock now on the NewCon Press website. You can find it online, sort of 20 quid along those lines. It'll be a signed, yeah, these are signed limited editions. This is 80 something of 100 copies, and At the Speed of Light will be similar, I think. Yeah, 91 of 100. So the problem is going to be the 4th one, which is, if I remember rightly, yeah, an Alistair Reynolds novella called The Iron Tactician, and Alistair Reynolds being having a bit more name recognition perhaps than the other authors in this set. That particular novella, and it's because it's a limited edition, that particular novella goes for like 100 quid. So I sort of despair, honestly, of ever completing the set of 4. I'm not in a mad rush to get the Neil Williamson one. I will because, you know, because I can't help myself. But I don't know that I'll ever find the Alistair Reynolds one, which is a bit of a shame. Okay, and then we've got Ian Watson. I think it's an Ian Watson short story collection. Yeah. The 1,000-Year Reich is its cheery title. And this has 18 short stories from Ian Watson, and this is signed, so numbered limited edition. This is number 98 of 100. Apparently there's the lower the number, the more cachet and collectability it has, but you know, what have you. So there's 18 stories in here, with an introduction by Justina Robson. And we got one by Kat Sparks, Dark Harvest, which I think is a novel. She's Australian. And this one is a limited edition of just 50, and this is number 2. Actually, these are short stories. It's not a novel at all. And there's, I don't know, 10 or 15 short stories in here. We're quite Australian in aspect, I think. What's quite nice about these NewCon Press books is they have to tempt you further, they have a little, you know, recent books by them listed here too. So you know, not read anything by her, hadn't really heard of her, but it wasn't expensive, I don't think. And then this is another one in a set of 4 novellas, which I've only got this one so far. The Beasts of Lake Off by Tom Toner. This is one of his other few published works, along with the Amarantine Spectrum. So I bought that because of the Tom Toner connection, really. And I think there's one in this set by Justine Robson, another one by Adam Roberts, and somebody else. I forget who, it probably says on the inside here. Let's have a look. Andrew Bannister, Ren Warham, and Justine Robson, so not Adam Roberts at all. So, you know, I might well seek those out as well. And this will be, I think, signed and limited. Yeah. 50 copies, number 36, signed by Tom Toner himself. And then the last one I got from the sale there is a anthology edited by Ian Waits, who owns and runs NewCon Press, a small publisher that I think he started accidentally. And this was to celebrate the first 10 years of NewCon Press, and this was published in 2016, so it's been going another almost 10 years since then. So I imagine there'll be a 20th anniversary run. So this is Conflicts and Crises and Conflicts. and it's got short stories in it by Adam Roberts, Tade Thompson, Ian Waits himself, are the ones that I recognise immediately. And because it's a NewCon Press book, it's signed by all the contributors, including the introducer, which is Ian Waits himself, I think. So again, a limited edition of 100 signed copies, and this is number 71. So that was my splurge on the NewCon Press website. There, as I said before, they're a UK-based small press publisher, and they focus on genre fiction, science fiction in the main, but also a bit of fantasy and horror. It's definitely worth a look at their website, which I'll put on the screen. Right, let's do some collection fillers that I'd sought out online. If you watched July's book haul, you remember me talking about the Gollancz binaries, which are like the ace doubles, so they contain 2 books. There were only 4 of them. I had one that I found in a charity shop ages ago, and it occurred to me that I might seek out the other 3, having found out there were only 4 of them. And this one I'd ordered at the same time as books 2 and 3, but this one didn't turn up, so this is a second attempt at getting this one. So this has Leningrad Nights by Graham Joyce, and it has How the Other Half Lives by James Lovegrove in it. And this is in pretty much pristine condition. So that completes my set of those 4. Yeah, so this little set of 4 dates back to the year 2000, so it's like 25 years old now. And then a couple of hauls back I had from the ones that Whitney brought over from the US for me, books 1, 2 and 4 of the Vonda McIntyre Starfarer series, but I was missing book 3. I didn't quite get to order it in time, so I had to track it down. I had this one shipped from the US, so the book itself wasn't expensive, it was like a £5, but then shipping on top of that took it to more like £12 or £13, a bit more than I really wanted to spend, but you just can't find it in this country. It wasn't issued in this edition here in the UK. So that is Metaphase, which is book 3, and Ursula K. Le Guin says on the front, the powerful 3rd novel in the most important series in science fiction, which is, I don't know, possibly a bold claim, but this is actually in pretty much mint condition. So these date back to the mid-90s, if I remember rightly, 93 or 4. So at some point I must give those a read. And then having more or less completed the Broderick and Filippo 101 best novels list, my attention has been turned to the preceding David Pringle list, of which I've got far less. I've probably got about 80, so I'm getting close to if not completion, then I've certainly got the majority of them. So the first is Alas Babylon by Pat Frank, which is a sort of post-apocalypse type tale from the 50s, if I remember rightly. And this is actually a Pan Giant first edition in the UK, 1959 copyright, and then this edition published in 1961. And it's pretty much in perfect condition. It's unbroken, unfaded, very nice mint copy. And then we've got Ian Watson, the aforementioned Ian Watson, the Embedding, which is also on that Pringle list. And then towards the end of the Pringle list, I think from the early 80s, 1984 in this case, I think the first edition would have been 83 in the US perhaps, but this is, Panther Books from 1984, is The Birth of the People's Republic of Antarctica by John Calvin Batchelor, which is an epic novel apparently. The quantum leap into an apocalyptic era, I do like the end of the world. The age of exile, in which one of modern fiction's most memorable heroes leads a group of the world's dispossessed across the oceans to a devastating appointment with destiny on the ice and bedrock at the bottom of the world. And apparently it's hypnotic and thought-provoking. So, I don't know, we'll see. Good to have that. And then I'm moving away from the lists now and to just kind of completing. So I'm gradually tracking these down. So I think this is in the Kon-Tiki Quartet, and it's Insights by Eric Brown and Keith Brook collaboration. And there are 4 novellas and a coda in this, and I have 1 or 2 of them now. And this is book 3, Insights. It's not signed. There is a signed edition. There's numbered limited edition, but I think, as I said last time, there's only so many books with Eric Brown's signature that I need, so I'm just tracking down any old copy of them, signature or not, just to complete the set. So I'm gradually getting now. I've still got quite a lot to get in. That there are 3, I think it is, maybe it's 4. I think 3 sets of novellas that Eric Brown did with PS Publishing, and this is Kon-Tiki is one of them. I read Beggars in Spain by Nancy Kress back in July, and I enjoyed it. And on realising that there were 2 sequels, I sought them out. The second book in what I now realise is a trilogy is Beggars and Choosers. That's from 1994. And then Beggar's Ride, which is from a couple of years later, 1996. These are both US editions from Tor, and Beggars and Choosers in pretty good state. The Beggar's Ride is a little bit, and I mean a little bit, dinged up, just on the top of the jacket, just from shelf wear, but they're otherwise in really nice condition. So I don't know to what extent those, I mean, obviously continue the story in some respect, but I don't know if they're like a direct sequel, or if there's a skip forward in time. I shall find out when I read them. So that's those, and then we've got some charity shop finds. Not many of those these days, because I've just got so many books now that the chances of me finding something that's both in good condition and that I don't already have are getting less and less. But there's always worth a look, because you never know what's going to turn up. So from my local Oxfam bookshop the other day was this find, which is Burning Chrome by William Gibson, of course, which is a short story collection that's set in the same. Or it has 2 or 3 stories that are set in the same world as Neuromancer. And this is a UK first edition paperback. There was a Gollancz hardback that preceded this, and by a year or 2. But this is from 1988. The hardback would have been 1986. And I have actually read this. I've got another copy of it somewhere. But I'm going to jettison that one and keep this one. And it's in really, it's a little bit creased on the spine and a little bit dinged, but it's actually, you can pay £20 for this if you choose to buy it online, and obviously I found it for like £2.50 or something, so happy days. We've got a couple of Charles Sheffield books, which I think are in a series. I think it's the Heritage series, maybe. Yeah, so I already had Summertide. Yeah, then I found Divergence, which is book 2 of the Heritage series. I don't know how many there are in there, 5 or 6 probably. Then I've got Resurgence, which I think is there's an initial series that I think it's called The Convergence, and then a follow-on series which this is part of. So this is like book N of many in that series. So I probably, I don't know if it was a good idea to buy that one, but it wasn't expensive. I'm yet to read any Charles Sheffield, something I must fix. And talking of Charles Sheffield, I found this sitting on a charity shop shelf. I think in the Oxfam in Richmond, near where I work, and this is Sight of Proteus by Charles Sheffield, which I would have bought anyway, but I particularly like this. Got Sidgwick and Jackson, so-called Silver, and you can see why it's called Silver, of which there are an unknown number. I mean, I'm sure someone somewhere knows how many there are, but I can't tell if there's 8 or 10 of them or umpteen. So as you'll see in a little while, my collecting juices have begun to flow. I already have, this will be the 4th one. I've got Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, False Dawn as another, as a Clifford Simak, which I also found in a charity shop, and then a Keith Laumer, which somebody gave to me. So I am, if I can find them relatively easily, then I'm just going to buy them. I think, it's possible I bought this on eBay, actually. I can't remember. I certainly found one of these on a charity shop, but that might have been the Clifford Simak. So I think this is probably one that I bought online. But anyway, so that I've got a few of those. There's a couple more to come actually in this haul, so don't go away. And then I also found Stanislav Lem in this. I quite like this format, and this is a short story collection, I believe. So I mainly bought it for the cover, honestly, because the Solaris I've read, and it's not true to say I didn't enjoy it, but it didn't wow me in the way that I was expecting it to. And there were elements of it that I found pretty dry and boring. And then I think this was off my Amazon wish list. Well, in fact, I know it was off my Amazon wish list, but whoever kindly bought it for me didn't include any kind of message, so I don't know who it's from. But anyway, it's arrived. Gareth Powell's Future's Edge, which is his newest book. It was out in February, I think, this year. So to whoever, if you're watching, whoever plucked that off my Amazon wishlist and sent it to me, I'm very grateful. As I've said many times before, it always puts a big smile on my face when I receive a book that I wasn't expecting. So a huge thanks to me. A huge thanks from me to whoever you are. Do let me know in the comments if it was you, or by all means continue to be secret squirrel about it. I don't mind either way. I have a Broken Binding science fiction subscription, so every couple of months, roughly. Their timing has been a little bit off recently. I receive a book, and in this case, it was Left-Handed Darkness by Ursula Le Guin, which has, as the Broken Binding books typically do, has sprayed edges, including a bit of graphic design on the front. It's got custom art on the end papers. Very nice. And then sometimes they have art printed on the boards, but in this case it's more like a graphic design, a bit of a blurb, and then kind of silver gilt lettering all round. So that's rather nice. And there's an introduction from China Mieville in this particular copy, and an introduction by Ursula Le Guin. So it's the same text block as I imagine it's a prior Gollancz edition or something like that. Yeah, produced by Gollancz for the Broken Binding. So the text block itself is nothing particularly fancy. It's just a copy of a pre-existing book, but they've obviously jazzed it up to make it sexy, somewhat sexy. So that's the latest in my Broken Binding subscription. Okay, so Wigtown in southwest Scotland, which is probably a couple of hours south of Glasgow. It's not far. It's quite near the border with England, actually. So my wife and I were staying in a lighthouse in a place called Causewall, which is north of Stranraer, and on the way there from Newcastle, where we were for my daughter's graduation, we stopped in Wigtown, which my wife somewhat grudgingly revealed was nearby, and was renowned for having a bunch of bookshops. I'd never heard of it, honestly. So I think, as I said earlier, it's like this sort of like the Scottish version of Hay-on-Wye. And I think if Hay-on-Wye is now a shadow of its former self, then Wigtown is a bit of a shadow of a shadow. It was quite quiet, but there was joy to be had, I must say, as you'll see. So the first and probably the most productive place that we went to was somewhere creatively called the Bookshop, which is run apparently by a famously grumpy proprietor who has a trophy on his wall of an early model of a Kindle, which he took out into the woods and shot. So it's mounted like a hunting trophy on the wall. He actually wasn't there the day that we went. He was off doing some collecting, buying or something like that for the shop. So it was a perfectly pleasant assistant that was running the place at the time. So there's just a couple of minutes, a few seconds of footage of the bookcase of science fiction books that was in this bookshop, from which I did pretty well. I was on holiday, so holiday money isn't the same as normal money, so I didn't pay any attention to how much these things were costing, and it wasn't at all painful when I paid in a way that it might have been if I wasn't on holiday. I think you'll know what I mean. So the first one that I got is Two Eyes by Stuart Gordon, and I bought this because I've got Three Eyes, which I hadn't realised, although the clue's in the title, I suppose, that it was the third book in a series of I think 3, but possibly 4. So I don't have One Eye, which is the first one. You can see the pattern, right? Two Eyes is the second, Three Eyes is the third, and maybe there's a fourth. I'm not sure. But anyway, so I bought that just because I have an incomplete set, and no one likes an incomplete set. And then I bought a Connie Willis book that I never heard of before, Lincoln's Dreams. I don't think so. Grafton. A little bit of a crease on the spine there, but otherwise pretty clean copy. And this, I think, is from pretty early in her career. Yeah, so this is a paperback original from 1988. I guess Doomsday Book was around 1980, wasn't it? So it's not that early. Maybe Doomsday Book was 1990. I have a feeling, just from a clue on the back of the book here, that this might have been her debut novel. So I'll confirm that on the screen. And then I spotted Lisa Tuttle, Memories of the Body. Lisa Tuttle is an American author, I think, who at some point in the past was as well as being an author in her own right, was also married to Christopher Priest. But I've not read any Lisa Tuttle before. I'm actually not 100% sure this is science fiction. Well, it certainly implies that it is. It says on the back here, Lisa Tuttle is at the cutting edge of modern SF. Her stories are penetrating, disturbing, and witty. So this is a collection. Actually, it's not a novel; it's a collection. And then we have The Eye of the Queen by Philip Mann, which I confess I bought simply for the cover. A bunch of these books were bought in a massive collection from somebody called A&B Cox. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, and they've all got this little label stuck in, which I thought might be a post-it note, but is a bit more serious as a sticker. So I'll probably just leave them in there. and it says on it that the date that the book was purchased, where they got it from. It's got a reference number for their own library, or maybe that's the Dewey reference. Maybe it looks like a Dewey decimal reference, actually. And then in some of them, it says whether it was A or B Cox that bought the book. But anyway, this one, it's not clear. So this is a Granada from the early 80s, I think. Let's have a look. 84, yeah. Philip Mann, mainly for the cover. And then I bought Perry Rodan, the first Perry Rodan book, Enterprise Stardust. I've got a handful of these, like 3 or 4. And the earliest one that I had was book 2. So not that I'm going to have really in mind a massive reading project for all 30 or whatever it is that were published in English in these Arrow editions, but or Orbit in this case. But I would like to read the first one at some point, at least, and see what the fuss is about. Perry Rodan, of course, being a sort of massive publishing behemoth. There are something in excess of 1,000 of them now, mostly not translated from German, but very successful. I think often billed as the most successful science fiction series ever. So anyway, that's book 1. I gather that the first 30 that were translated to English, in fact, the first kind of couple of hundred of them are pretty pulpy and not terribly mature writing, but the story arcs get more and more complex to the later ones that are only in German, unfortunately. So we may never know. And we've got a couple of Kate Wilhelm, author, of course, of Where Late the Sweet Bird Sang. So Huysman's Pets. I actually had my eye on a Gollancz Yellow Jacket of that, but kind of forgot about it, and then saw the book in paperback, so I thought paperback would do me. And then I found another Kate Wilhelm in the same place, The Clewiston Test, which is in Arrow Books, and it is in pretty much perfect condition. And this will date back to 1979 in this case. So this will be a paperback first edition, I think, in the UK. And I didn't pay any attention to the price. I hadn't realised it was £10.50. I might have, holiday money or not, I might have thought twice about it. But by the time I got to the till, it was too late. I was committed. So that's that Clewiston Test, but it is in very nice condition, so I can't complain. Then I bought Paul Park, which looks like colitis or cystitis, but it isn't. It's coalestis. And I bought this purely because one of his novels, Soldier of Paradise, I think it is on the Broderick and DeFilippo list. And this looks, sounds interesting. So this is one of his early-ish novels. I think his 4th. Where Soldiers of Paradise was his first, and this dates back to 1994, and will be a UK first edition, I think. As far as I can tell, it's a standalone, singleton novel. And then I bought Chris Moriarty's Spin Control, which is a sequel, I think, to another book. I sort of got a bit confused. I hadn't realised till afterwards. I thought this was the first one, but it isn't. Spin State is the first one, and it's a space opera that I'd never heard of, and I think I used it for one of my space opera videos, either the early 2000s or the 1990s, I forget. But anyway, so I need to find Spin State from somewhere. This is a Bantam Spectrum US edition. So those are all the paperbacks that I got in the bookshop, but I did get a few more things. So I was pleased to find a copy of To Live Again by Robert Silverberg, and I had a copy of this, which was in slightly better condition. This is a tiny bit spine faded. I don't know how well you can see that in the glare of the lights, but trust me, it's a little bit spine faded. Not a lot, but just a tiny bit. It's a Sidgwick and Jackson first edition from the UK. And I had a copy that I found in a charity shop for a couple of pounds somewhere, and I ended up selling it at his request to Steve at Our Bookseller, because he needed it to complete or to add to his collection. And he did pay me a good price and gave me a very mint paperback copy of the same book, but I was pleased to find another hardback copy of this, so I'm going to add that to my collection quite happily. To Live Again by Robert Silverberg, and then another of these Sidgwick and Jackson Silver. In this case, it's Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, Time of the Fourth Horseman, which I do have. Where is it? Which I do have in a US first edition. In fact, I think it's a signed US first edition. It's one of her earlier books, and I think probably from a writing quality point of view, it's probably not all that great. Where's the signature? Yeah, Chelsea Quinn Yarborough, signed by the lady herself. So I have to decide what I'm going to do about that one. I'll probably keep it. But this is with the UK first edition in the Sidgwick and Jackson Silver, so-called Silver, which, as I said earlier, I'm beginning to get twitchy about collecting. So I think they're quite smart. I actually prefer these, to the Gonlax Yellow Jacket. I think they're a bit more, a bit smarter. Yeah, first published in the UK in 1980. So this would be the 1980 first edition. And then there were four. Is it four? Yeah, four Barrington Bailey hardback books. So we've got Knights of the Limits. These are all in Allison and Busby. They're quite austere, not quite as austere as the Sidgwick and Jackson Silvers, but it's a quite austere graphic design on them, which I quite admired. And they weren't hugely expensive, sort of between £6 and £8. So I think this would have been one of his earlier novels. And we got The Fall of Chronopolis. Again, pretty austere design, which I quite like. And these are in pretty much mint condition. The only thing I'd say is that the previous owner had taped the dust jacket via cunning method, so that it didn't move around on the book. And unfortunately, which I've removed, but the tape has left a little bit of a residue. Unfortunately, quite why they did that, I don't know. But anyway, so it does have a little bit of residue at the top there. And all of them are the same. They all have it. And then we've got Collision with Kronos. Again, very smart. Sorry about the glare. And then The Soul of the Robot, which I think is probably his, I don't know if it's his debut novel. Certainly the first of them published by this crowd. This was from 1974. So I think it was probably his first novel. I'm not 100% sure. He might have had a few more published in the US prior to that. So it's quite nice to get those four Barrington Bailey hardbacks. If I ever see sort of hardbacks from this era, then I kind of grab them because you don't come across them very often. And then, talking of not coming across them very often, I was very pleased to find what's quite an expensive book, quite hard to track down, is the Entropy exhibition by Colin Greenland, which is a sort of scholarly work looking at the British New Wave, in particular the influence of New Worlds magazine, which was edited for quite a long time by, if not its entire existence, by Michael Moorcock. And this takes a close look at that. So it's non-fiction, and this is in pretty much perfect condition. This I paid £20 for, but it can easily set you back £30 or £40. So although it was expensive, it was quite a lot less expensive than it might have been. So I'm happy to have that. I haven't read a lot of New Wave fiction, and I suspect it's probably not. I'm a bit of a fan of sort of bangy, crashy space opera science fiction. I have simple tastes, so it might be a little bit above my head, generally speaking. New Wave fiction, I think. I'm open-minded, but I am interested in the history of it, so I should give that a read at some point. So that was everything that I got in the bookshop in Wigtown, and then I went to another shop called Well Read Books, I think. In which I only found one book that I was interested in. That was the hardback of Echopraxia by Peter Watts, sequel, of course, to Blindsight, probably better known for that. And this is a UK, I think, no, it's a US first edition in the Tor from 2014. I do have a paperback of it somewhere, so I can jettison that from my collection. I would like the hardback of Blindsight too, because I've got an omnibus that I could also get rid of. But for now, that sits on my shelves. It's the only copy of Blindsight that I've got. And then we went to a bookshop. I'm saying it's a bookshop, but really it's somebody's house and their garage and another outbuilding and their downstairs toilet. And basically every surface in their house that we were allowed to see is covered by bookshelves, and they're all for sale. So the old boy that runs it used to live in London. He and his, I assume his wife, moved to Wigtown 20 odd years ago. He's been in the book trade for 50 odd years. I think probably had a more traditional shop down south when he was living there. And he said that when they moved, they had 8 tons of books and 2 tons of possessions. So it gives you some sense of the scale of the thing. So I don't know how old he is now, but he's pretty doddery and a little bit unkempt, honestly. But so this place is known as, it's what is it, Song of the Dragon, I think it is, Sign of the Dragon, and it's just somebody's house. It's a few hundred yards outside the main drag, off the main drag of Wigtown, just in a very residential street, and it doesn't look like a shop at all. There are little signs all over the place saying, please knock and wait. It's a bit slow these days. But anyway, it's incredible. So he has his entire pretty much downstairs living space is dedicated to shelves, and not just around the edges, as you'll see. I think I took a little video clip, and then there's another room which is a double garage, which is also full to the brim of shelving, and then it's kind of spread around the house, including the downstairs loo, which is a bit odd. But anyway, but so there's a phenomenal number of books in there. Some of which I suspect came with him from London and have been there ever since. So I didn't get very many there, despite the overwhelming number of things there. But so I was a bit choosy. But among the things that I did get was a Double Shadow by Frederick Turner. This is in the same Sidgwick and Jackson livery that I'm fond of. So that takes the total number of these up to 5 or 6, I think. You know, depending on how many of them there are, if I can track down a list somewhere of them, then I might make it my business to get hold of more of them. But certainly if I see them out in the wild, then I'll be grabbing them. And this is from 1979. As far as I can tell, all of these Sidgwick and Jackson silvers were from the sort of late 70s, 78, 79, 1980, maybe a little bit into the early 80s. So this was a 4 or 5 year period around that time. And again, this is in really nice condition. He actually had another Sidgwick and Jackson. I can't remember who it was by now, or the title of the book wasn't very helpful, but that was quite expensive, so I just left it there. I'm not yet obsessed enough about collecting them to spaff, you know, £20 on a copy. Could happen though, because there's among that set, I happen to know there is an Olivia Butler first edition, and obviously with the name recognition that goes with that, it's one of her earlier books as well. That goes for big money, like over £100. So if I do want a complete set at some point, I'm going to have to shell out for one of those. But in the meantime, I've contented myself with this, The Grain Kings by Keith Roberts. Somebody's car alarm's just gone off. Hopefully that'll stop very soon. So The Grain Kings by Keith Roberts, a writer whose work I've enjoyed so far. This is in the Panther Granada. Would have been from the early, mid-70s, yeah, 76. 77 for this edition. So I don't know much about that, but everything that I've read of his so far has really gelled with me, so I'm looking forward to that. I bought from Sign of the Dragon a fantasy masterworks of Vericonium. So this has got, I think, 3 novels in it by M. John Harrison. And this is as new, and I paid £14 for it, I think. It is a little bit foxed on the text block. So I think this contains a few short stories and 2 or 3 novels, one of which I think I've already got separately. But I don't know if it's more it's fantasy rather than science fiction, really. But hence it's in the fantasy masterworks series. But so I bought it because it's an important book, I think, from early in M. John Harrison's career. Then we've got Brian Stableford that I just nabbed, and I think I bought this because it's on the David Pringle 100 Best Novels list. It's quite helpful when you're confronted by an array of probably tens of thousands of books, to have a list of things that you're actually looking for, that I was zeroed in on. So I mainly spent my time sort of searching around the shelves which were more or less in alphabetical order, for the books that I needed on the Pringle list. I think this was one of them. And then back to Silverberg, a copy of Dying Inside. I do have a science fiction masterworks, one of the newer yellow ones of this, which somebody very kindly sent to me some months back. But I'm happy to have found a vintage copy, and with thanks to whoever it was that sent it to me, I can't remember now, I will pass on the science fiction masterworks. Another list-based purchase, this is on the Pringle list, Philip Jose Farmer, The Unreasoning Mask, quite a cool cover, and that's in very, very smart Granada. It's pretty much mint, certainly fine, I would say, and that's from 1983. Would have been a UK first edition, certainly in paperback. Then we've got a Vonda McIntyre, Barbary, which I hadn't realised when I bought it, but on the closer inspection, I realised is really a young adult book, or maybe even children. So I'm not sure I would have bought it if I'd realised that. But nonetheless, it's now in my collection. It's Barbary by Vonda McIntyre. Yes, according to the bit on the back here, it's an exciting space adventure for younger readers. All right, so I'm young at heart, so maybe I'll like it too at some point. And I think I'm right in saying that's everything for this haul. So I hope you enjoyed that. Do let me know in the comments if there's anything in that list that you like the look of, or that I should bump up my TBR plans, or if you know anything about the books that I haven't mentioned, then do let me know in the comments. But otherwise, as usual, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye for now.